Hello, welcome to the Bigger Truth Show. I am Scott McMahon, and I'm excited about today. This is episode number 17, and I'm going to be talking about just some things that are some current psyops that are going on. I'm going to step back to my very first report that launched the Bigger Truth Media back in January, and that kind of started everything. I'm going to go over some things from that report that I've been thinking about that still hold true, and that I think are really important to consider even today, because I I had whistleblowers share with me exactly the specific methods that are used to gain psychological influence over people. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some current psyops around the machine fraud psyop, and we're going to talk about Shelby Busch. I said yesterday I'd be playing a part of a phone conversation that I had with her where she talked about working with CIA and the Flynns since 2015-16, and another very related psyop that Sidney Powell actually got very much involved in. So that is what's on tap for today, and I'm glad you're here and welcome to comment. Left of Center says that you just tagged me. The Jovan Pulitzer came out and said the machines did not flip votes. How about that? It's almost like he's been listening to me. He wanted to do a 3-on-1 uh, thing with me, and I said, "Well, if I could bring a couple people, um, I think that the couple people that I would want to bring, I don't think you would want to face." I didn't say who they are, but oh, Jovan, Jeffrey Philia was his name until he uh, do it. Yeah, well, I'd love to do, if there's any way we could do like a 3-on-3 tag team debate, that would just be phenomenal. That would be amazing, but I don't think that he would ever agree to that. Um, yeah, so, uh, Jeffrey Philia, that was his name before he changed his name, and he changed his name because he invented so in 2020, he came out and he was promoting himself as the inventor of the QR scanner. And that is completely false. He did not invent the QR scanner. He did, however, invent the QCat, which is a scanner that may have been able to read QR codes. I'm not sure, but I think it was Newsweek or Time Magazine named it one of the 50 worst inventions of all time. He lost over $185 million of his investors' money, and in disgrace, he decided to reinvent himself. So he changed his name from Jeffrey Philia to Jovan Pulitzer, and and then he became a treasure hunter. It's so hilarious. He became a treasure hunter, and then he used a sword that was bought in a souvenir store, and he claimed that it was some ancient Roman relic that was found in the United States. And so that is Jovan Pulitzer before he got involved in claiming that he was an expert in bamboo fibers and Asian paper fibers and scanners and all of this. I don't know why people pay attention to the guy, but he's got quite the cult following. So that was unplanned and impromptu, but he's a character. So let's get into this. I want to bring up this story. And this is really I mean it just, to me, this really shows just how God has been in all of this. So I right before Christmas, um, I was kind of laid off from my job as a local um, reporter, because my buddy that ran the paper, he was out of funds, and starting up in digital media is extremely difficult, and to do so in a professional way, it's just really hard. So and we're still friends. We're still good friends, but um, that was a challenging time in my life, and I was just on my knees, and I told the Lord that whatever doors He would open, I would walk through, and almost immediately, doors started opening within the Michigan Republican Party of people that wanted to tell the story about how the party had fallen into just such terrible, dire straits. And so I had 5 whistleblowers come to me to tell me about that were willing to go public with their names that had in-depth experience with Mike Labadie, who is this shadow operator that I said in the headline here that 5 whistleblowers expose covert operation to brainwash Christian grassroots in an effort to destroy the Michigan GOP. And this story just had a huge impact. I was told by someone who sent it that someone sent it directly to President Trump, and I believe that that's true because within a couple days of me publishing this, President Trump endorsed Pete Hoekstra and got very much involved. He had Michael Whatley, who was that was before he became the chair of the RNC. Michael Whatley um, was the general counsel, and he weighed in and said that Christina Cramo's removal was legitimate. And all of that's happened right after I published this paper, and this is also my most viewed piece that I've written. This one has cumulatively over 200,000 views. So this was, I mean, it became a pretty important piece. So let's go ahead. I want to share with you from it, and it's a long piece. I think it's about 6,000 words. I'm obviously not going to read the whole thing, so don't worry about that. Um, but I want to share where I talked about how specifically Mike Labadie, who was um, Mike Labadie was a this is him right here. That's a tiny picture. I'm sorry. But he's on the left here. There really aren't very many pictures of him. But he was a Democrat. He registered as a Democrat just weeks before the 2016 election in California. And then he all of a sudden shows up in Michigan and is speaking kind of far right Christian nationalist talk in 2017. Gets involved in the Republican Party and puts himself in a position where these I gotta go through and update these pictures so that they're bigger. Um, but there's a screenshot right here of his voter registration. This is a screenshot of his office that he used. I found this online. I spent several weeks working on this report, and um, just this was a pretty significant report. But I talked about the indoctrination method, the method that he would use, and I think that this is really important. So I kind of after talking with these whistleblowers, and they had been subjected to this method themselves. So and they all confirmed it. I went over this with all of them, and he has. I really believe there's some indications um, that he is actually directly connected with Mike Flynn, and I'm not going to get over into that too much now, but I didn't at this time when I published this, I was really just looking at what's happening within the Michigan Republican Party. And I some people were suggesting that Flynn had something to do with this, but I was just focused on telling this story and really understanding what had happened here in Michigan. So here are the steps. There are, I think it's 6 steps. I should have reviewed this. Yeah, 6 steps. Step so 7 steps. So, and kind of an eighth. So let's go ahead and go through these because I think that this is valuable. It really applies to what what he did one on one because this is kind of how he would profile and bring people in. I think that this is happening. I think that there are operatives in every state that do this. So wherever you are, I think that this is something that's worth paying attention to, and it's also something that they do to us kind of in mass, and so we can be more aware of and alert to this. So step one is observation, and JD Glosser was one of my whistleblowers. He said that he doesn't talk to you unless he's already decided to work with you, and so he would have people often record conversations with somebody that he was profiling, and he could profile somebody even for weeks before he ever spoke to them. And so he knew what he was looking for was to determine whether or not he could control you and whether or not you were somebody that would be useful to him. But I also think just since then, since I wrote this, I've come to the conclusion that he also specifically profiles people who are low information, and that kind of goes into their, whether or not he can control you. But he wants to know the that the person, that they're deliberately trying to attract and market to people and choose people who have either a shady past or they don't see the bigger picture. And so that they can control them. And so we have a lot of there's in almost every state when they first come to me, they before I even talk to them, they call them the crazies because these people really are pretty crazy. I mean, they choose people with psychological issues. I I really see that as part of there's so many people that have genuine psychological problems, pathological, sociopathic type problems, and that's who they choose to draw in. People like Brian Ferentz, for example, but there's so many. I mean, they really do attract and target people that have problems. So that they can exploit and they can use to their advantage because like I said yesterday, the turd in the punch bowl, like thanks to credit to Adam, it they want to color the whole punch bowl with turd by bringing in people that are just crazy and either whether they have screws loose or they are they just tend to anger or whatever, or they believe in wild conspiracy theories because there are some really wild conspiracy theories, um, that, that they discolor the whole punch bowl. And so that's step 1, is that they profile, and I think that's really important. Step 2 is he would establish his authority. So when he approaches someone, he builds himself up, and so he had the same story every time, and in Mike Labity's case, his story was that he was that he had been in the intelligence community and that he had worked for the UN, to take out all of these tyrant, you know, people, to train people on how to deal with the tyrants and the bad guys, and so he wanted to use that to, he said, to save, the country, save the state, save the country, save the party. And, um, they also use to establish their authority, they use the Bible, and they use key passages of the Bible, especially from the Old Testament, but also from the New Testament that are all about the armor of God, protecting yourself against the enemies, that there's enemies all around you, those types of things. So this is but they use it also, they use the Bible to convince people, especially Christians, that they're a Christian too, because we don't expect that somebody that is not a Christian is going to be quoting the Bible and saying they're a Christian. That's not something that we expect people to lie about, and they really use that well. Um, this was an interesting quote. Christy Claimer, she really effectively ran Christina Karamo's campaign for Secretary of State. She said that, and she was one of the whistleblowers. She was worked really one-on-one with Christina Karamo and with Mike Labadie for almost 2 years of the campaign. So she got to know both of them very well. And she said that, she said, "Mike told me once that Freemasons know scripture better than pastors do." He never actually said he was a Freemason, but he talked about them often. When we first met, he told me that his mission was to get the church more involved in politics. Now that right there is a terrifying quote to me. That's something that I've gone back to so often because it very clearly is a big part of their whole operation is to get to not just put the turd in the punch bowl of the GOP, but also of the church itself. And they're trying to defame the church and discredit the church by saying that this is how all Christians are. And it really that it works in tangent with with the left and with the mainstream media and a lot of their narratives about Republicans and about the church. So step 2 is, establishing his own authority and building himself up. Step 3 is affirmation. And so they would so he builds himself up, and then talking to the target, they would, talk about, start to take an interest in the target, and that affirms the target, makes them think that they're important, asking questions about the target. So you've got this, "Oh, this guy, he was part of the deep state, like, he was, like, really, he knows the intelligence community, and he's taking an interest in me," that kinda thing. So step 4 would be, this is a really important one, is a declaration of the target's, the subject's importance. And Mike Labadie would always say, to save the state, save the nation from the globalists for future generations. So that was a big part of that was his exact language. And so he would, through asking the questions and really through the profiling and study process of the person beforehand, he would already have a role in mind for that person. He would tell them that they have a really important role to save the nation and the state from the globalists for future generations. Um, and Claimer said that he tells you what your role is in the mission, that you have a really important purpose, and that you could help save the state and this country for your children and your grandchildren. And he would say that kind of thing often, according to not just these 5 whistleblowers, but after I published this, I had dozens and dozens more that had communicated directly with Labadie, and they said that everything that I wrote here was about him was true. So step 4 was this declaration of your own importance, and the this is a really, and you can see this um, in what they do, as both as an organization, but there's this, we all want purpose, right? So it's this declaration of your purpose. We all want to know what our purpose is. That's kind of a deep-seated human need that we all have. And so when somebody that we think is important tells us that we've got this important purpose, and they also say that this is, or this is aligned with President Trump, and we want to support President Trump, and we I think that there are a lot of very legitimate and terrible problems as far as communist takeover of this country. All of those things come together, and you desperately want to try to save this country. And here's somebody who seems to have the authority and the connections to be able to actually have a hand in saving the country, and they're telling you that you could play a role, and that's just seductive. That's really, really seductive. Step 5 is this warning, and this is really important, and this is a key aspect of building any cult, is you have to convince your people not to pay any attention to the enemy, and the enemy is all around you, and so you have to be guarded, and you only have to you can only listen to the people that are, the cult leader and the people within the cult. That's the whole idea. They psychologically manipulate you into believing that the only people that you can ever listen to are within the cult. So, and there's, he uses a lot of scripture that's selectively edited to that, this whole idea that the enemy is all around you, and you've got to be wise as serpents. And they kind of leave off the gentle as doves kind of thing. Step 6 is a test. And so this is a test that's specifically, so he would then, once he kind of draws you in, gives you the sense of purpose, and warns you about the enemies all around you, that he's going to start testing you. And these tests are designed to get you to violate your conscience. Because if he can get you to violate your conscience, then he's got control over you, and it'll deepen, very, like, really deepen your his control over you, because then that it, you have to maintain your good grace with him, with the cult leader, in order um to feel good about yourself. You justify to yourself the violating of your conscience by saying that it's helping to save the country, and being a part of this. And so now yourself, it starts to, you start to wrap your self identity in this. And I it it almost becomes, it really does become a part of your own condition, of your own salvation. And this is why, you get people like in Shelby Busch in the video that I shared yesterday. Shelby Busch talked about how, those people aren't like us. We wanna be good Christians, but all those people that don't believe in election fraud, like Stephen Richer, they're the enemy, they're satanic, they're evil. And, of course, that's completely unbiblical. Anybody that reads the Bible and actually, you know, humbly and truthfully seeks to, follow God's commandments, but that's not what these people are doing. It's the commandments of their cult. They convince you that this is Christian so that you continue to stay with it. And in light of what Flynn is doing right now with Citizens Defending Freedom and the Remnant Alliance and how he's working to um to bring churches and pastors into his movement, I think all of this is just so terrifying. Um And in the story, Christy Claimer gave an example of a time that Labadie was this is just an example of a test. Christy Claimer gave an example of a time Labadie was trying to get her to divulge some information to him that was told to her in confidence by someone else during the Secretary of State campaign. She said, Mike was wanting specific information from me, and I said, "Well, I can't answer that question because I told this person that I wouldn't share." He said something to the effect, "Christy, this information is very important, and in times like these, you have to share this type of information." Christy said, "You know how negative situations tend to be imprinted in our minds. I remember right where I was standing. Why? Because I remember feeling a lot of pressure to compromise my values and felt irritated that he thought that this was okay." Um, So, yeah, that's I think that's a really powerful example, I think. So then step 7 is evaluation and correction. So he would if if you pass the test, he'd evaluate. If you pass the test, then he'd come up with a new test that would push that window just a little bit more. And if you failed, then there would be correction. And that would include just cutting you off altogether. Um, JD Glosser said, if you don't agree with him, he hangs up on you and says, I'm out. And then you won't even hear from him again. And then he says that that he doesn't talk to you again until he thinks that you can't proceed without him, which is often true because he holds the organizational piece of the team you're working on. With some people, it's really effective, depending on how he's gotten to them emotionally. And I think with everyone, I mean, if you're volunteering your time within an organization, you're doing so because you have a passion for it and it's something that you've really prioritized. And if you're trying to work and get stuff done within that organization, but the head of the organization has cut you off so that you don't have the resources you need or the relationships you need within that organization to get stuff done, that can be really devastating. And so then it's just this rinse and repeat of this test and correct cycle um, that that he engages in. So, I think that this story is, you know, it, to me, it's important to me because it was kind of like a part of my own personal history with Bigger Truth Media, and also because it got so much attention, and I think it had a really big impact on the state of Michigan, and even continues to. And before that, most people had no idea who Mike Labadie was, but this report really, busted that open. And, um, so but it's also, I think, important even if you're not in Michigan, reading through and just considering not just these 7 steps that I laid out here, but it also I talked about the language, and these were some of my very earliest observations and impressions about what was happening within the Michigan Republican Party. And I'm certain that if you're involved in the Republican Party in any state, you will see tremendous commonalities. And I know for example that this before I ever even spoke with anybody in Arizona, as soon as I published this, because I published it just immediately before, I think it was like a day or 2 before the, state convention in Arizona, and this report was circulated in Arizona, and that had something to do with Jim O'Connor not getting elected there. Um, it was really Trump's endorsement of Gina Swoboda that that made that happen, but, um, yay, hey, Natalie. I'm glad you caught me. Say, "Yay, caught you live. Woohoo." Um, so that's what I wanted to share with that. Now, I wanna talk about the machine fraud narrative, and, I apologize, I got the sniffles. My boys have both been sick, so it might be my turn. Um, but so, again, I just keep this here to remind myself because 'cause I'm not very good at selling myself. So, biggertruth.myshopify.com is my merch store, and I have some ideas for some new merch. I'm gonna work on that tomorrow, and I'll get some, um I've got I've got a couple ideas, so I'm gonna try to put some stuff out tomorrow, and I'll share that with you next week, but, and I'll probably post it on X. So my personal favorite is, of course, the Ivan Raiklin mini me, and um, I also I really enjoy my cup, and the mug is on there. This is a double walled metal mug. This is full of very hot, boiling hot tea, and um, it just the cup is room temperature, so it keeps it hot for a long time. So that is that. Next, Kylie Jane Kramer, and, she is in Georgia, and I've had a few people from Georgia reach out to me and say that she and her mother are a big part of the problem in Georgia, as far as the problem within the Republican Party, the insurgency that is, the turd in the punch bowl in Georgia. So here, this is what she currently says about herself on X, that she's the executive director of Women for America First, hashtag March for Trump, official host of Save America rally on J6 at the Ellipse, and former producer of Sean Hannity. So Kylie, she she actually so and she has this is her pinned post, which is kind of wild, that she posted on December 19th of 2020, and she says, "The cavalry is coming, Mr. President, January 6th, Washington, DC." So she helped to organize, and this was December 19th. So she was one of the first to help to organize this March for Trump on January 6th. And it was then taken over by Caroline Wren, and I wrote a report on that. I'll link to that in the show notes on Substack. So Caroline Wren took it over by raising the funds. She raised $3 million for the stage at the Ellipse, and Caroline Wren is definitely a part of this whole group with Flynn and others. I've talked about her quite a bit. I talked about her yesterday in Arizona. She brought Gina Swoboda onto the war room in order to um, spin her actions in filing an amicus brief on in support of Adrian Fontes to make sure that the federal only ballot uh, people who couldn't prove their citizenship would get a full ballot, which is yeah, it is that crazy. And so she went Caroline Wren got her to go on Bannon's show, War Room, even though, the show goes on even while Bannon's in prison. And uh, yeah, so that's Caroline Wren. But Caroline Wren took it over, and that's kind of what she does. She takes stuff over. And I would imagine that there's probably not a lot of friendly feelings between Kylie Jane Kramer and Caroline Wren, because from what I understand, Caroline Wren is not the kindest person when she takes stuff over. And that was according to several people I had, several sources within Carrie Lake's 2022 gubernatorial campaign that confirmed that. Adam at Rescue Michigan says FBI counterintelligence operations motto: a turd in every punch bowl. I want to credit Adam. Adam is the mastermind behind the turd in the punch bowl, and I love that so much because in every way that is a perfect metaphor for what they do. And so, thank you, Adam, for bringing that up yesterday from your live comments. That was a huge contribution. I appreciate it. So this is Kylie Jane Kramer, and I bring her up because she posted this, and it's a long post, but I'm gonna go through it. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but I'm gonna read the highlighted portions. This is last week, so, almost a week ago Wednesday, I think, or week ago Friday, when she posted this, and this is Marjorie Taylor Greene was talking about how there was machine ballot flipping in Georgia, and that's kind of what this is about. But I think that this is an interesting and worthwhile study because it shows us a lot about the fraud, the machine fraud PSYOP. And so when I talk about the machine fraud PSYOP, that doesn't mean that I believe that there's no vulnerabilities in the machines or there's no problems or that the machines are even good. I don't believe any of those things. I do believe that straight up tabulators that scan ballots that are marked by hand are, I don't think that there's any problem with that. In fact, I think they're probably good. That's what we have here in Michigan. That's one of the few good things about our Michigan process. But in Georgia and in Tennessee and I believe in Texas and other states, they have touchscreen voting where you touch on the screen, prints out a what they call a ballot, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute, but it's not really a ballot. And so there's just like when you go to the grocery store and you're trying to use your credit card on the touch screen there, there's issues, or you're trying to order something at McDonald's on a touch screen, sometimes there's issues. And so, touch screens are definitely not infallible. And so here we go. Let me just read this. So we're already seeing major issues. And so she headlines it first with Georgia election fraud with sirens. Okay, this is fraud, election fraud. So the definition of fraud is that there's got to be some intent, right? They're trying to lie, and there's got to be some intent for it to be fraud. So from the very beginning, she's starting with this headline to try to convince people that there's fraud. Farm girl, glad you're back. Hey, all, I didn't get a notification. Okay, well, I'm glad you're here. So the um she goes into where we're already seeing major issues with the machines. Now, all of her language throughout this post is deliberately inflammatory from the very beginning. Then she says Congresswoman MTG confirmed there's an issue. Okay. So there she got a community note over that. It's not true that it was fraud. And so this whole thing was really kind of invalidated. But here we go. A voter chose Trump on the BMD, the ballot marketing device. Then the printed ballot came out of the tabletop printer before it was scanned to actually cast the ballot, which is a key thing. So this didn't actually affect the the counted vote. It's just what they're saying is that the person tapped Trump on the screen, but then when it printed out the ballot, it showed that they selected Kamala. And then, so that it does say that they were able to successfully select Trump and it correctly showed on the printed ballot. So they went to a new machine and started fresh and everything was fine. So it very easily could be that he just, how it is, especially, if you got fat fingers like I do, then maybe you hit the wrong one. I do that on my phone all the time. I push the wrong number. It happens. So, to say that this was machine fraud, deliberately flipping votes is just it's absurd. But they're doing everything they can to create this inflammatory rhetoric. And it's no wonder that somebody that would like Kylie Jane Kramer, who would go to this length to try to incite people, which is what this is, and to put people into an emotional panicked state. This is a psyop. If she's willing to do this, you can imagine what she's done to the Georgia Republican Party. Voters across Georgia are now being told to double check the printed ballot. Absolutely. Double check. Like they're now being told that. This is a brand new thing. I don't think so. I mean, always, even with if you're in the old days, when there was, punch card with the Chads, you still want to check your ballot and make sure that you did it correctly and spoil it if you didn't and get a new one. I mean, even when you're writing it, you want to make sure that you're filling in the bubble correctly. It's the same thing. Of course you double check it. I mean, how stupid do they think people are? Okay, so yeah, double check your ballot. It doesn't matter how you're voting, double, triple check it. Make sure that it's correct before you put it in the tabulator. She says, however, I want to know what difference does it make what the printed text on the ballot shows when the tabulator is only reading the QR code, not the text on the printed ballot. Now, so that you can see what she's talking about here. This is an example of a Fulton County ballot that is printed out. And when it's so after you vote, you touch all your selections on the screen, then it prints out a ballot. And now the Dominion or whoever the company is that produces these machines, their marketing to the elected officials is, oh, you're going to save your taxpayer money because now you're not going to have to print out all of the unique ballots that because every precinct in many cases you got different races that are local, and so you've got different versions of the ballots that all need to be printed, and sometimes there's mistake with the printers and that can cause delays and problems. And so, it's difficult to get them all printed and make sure that they're right for each, for every precinct. And so here you just need one machine. It's all uniform. It's super clean. You just type what you want. The computer does all the differences automatically by precinct. You just um, touch what you want to vote for and it spits out your ballot. And so this is what it is. And now her complaint is that when you put it into the tabulator, what the tabulator is scanning is the QR code, not the actual votes. Now, I agree with that complaint. I think that this does create a black box kind of situation that is definitely not good. I don't, we need transparency, we need security, and we need, I think that especially right now, we need to go to we need the government to go to some sort of length to ensure to provide us with a sense of security and confidence that our votes are being counted accurately. And this is a major problem in that because it could be, and what she goes on here at length to explain with much, very emotionally manipulative language. She says that there is literally no way for anyone to verify what the QR code will be read as. And so it is possible that so in this case, in this sample ballot, it says that for president of the United States, vote for one. It says vote for Joseph R. Biden. So this is a sample ballot from 2020. Now, and then it goes on down the list, right? And it very well could be that this QR code actually says something different than that, and we have no way of knowing that. This isn't a QR code that we can even scan with our phones to verify. So, that would be one way that they could create more security is you could scan it with your phone and you could see what that vote actually, what your ballot actually says. That would provide an additional layer of confidence and security, but they don't do that. So, but it's where she goes with this that I find really concerning. She says, "I've been sounding the alarm bells, blah, 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 it's not my fault. It's the big, it's their fault. Gotta distrust them." So, and then she says here, so this is where she starts to go out really off the rails. She says, "Isn't it our right as citizens to be able to ensure we are voting the way we intend?" So, yes, it I wouldn't say that it's I would say it differently. I would say that the government does have an obligation. Our elected officials have an obligation. Our election officials have an obligation to ensure and to prove to the citizens that we are voting the way that we intend. I agree with that. But the way that she worded it is our right as citizens to be able to ensure. That means that we should be able to do something. We have the right to do something to ensure it. And I don't know that, there's a distinction there. And I hope that that's clear, but it gets even further. She says the only option at this point is to ensure voters in Georgia have a secure, free, and fair election is by declaring a state of emergency to get rid of the machines and go to hand marked, hand counted paper ballots. Now, this is completely just ridiculous. The reality of the situation is every state has different election laws. All 50 states have different election laws. Some of them are good and some of them are not great. In Oklahoma, when I was there, I was really impressed with for their every mail-in ballot needs to be notarized. So every absentee ballot has a place that has to be notarized. And they actually have a rule that a notary public can only notarize 20 up to 20 ballots. They can't notarize more than 20 ballots. So that, that prevents somebody just doing 1,000 of these all in one batch. And who knows, if that was actually them. So, um, it does, I think that that's a really secure system because in order to get a notarized signature, you got to present your ID. And so that's the only way that you're doing universal ID for absentee voters and for in-person voters. I think that's an awesome thing. I think that's something that all 50 states should do. If you're gonna do absentee voting to ensure to have there's gotta be some way to check ID for those absentee voters. That's one of the biggest problems with it. But the point is that there's there's wildly different election laws in every state. We can't change our election laws 2 weeks before the election. We just can't do it. We got what we got. And I've said this so many times, Trump is absolutely right when he says too big to rig. They're trying to create the idea from the very beginning that this is machine election fraud, and it's not. It was fat fingers. It was something, it could be a calibration error in the machine. Here's an example now of it happening in Tennessee.
Stefan Reels has been looking into this. So, Stefan, last night we were told up to 12 of the 26 early voting sites were having this problem. Is it human error, machine error? What is it?
Well, Richard, the problem voters may be running into might actually be a mixture of both. It isn't necessarily a miscast vote, but misplaced fingers. And that could be due to a calibration problem.
I think you aim for up there, but you don't.
On Friday, Linda Phillips and the rest of the Shelby County Election Commission gave our team a run-through of how to use the county's voting machines.
Just touch the candidate's name.
This comes after several elected leaders raised the alarms less than 24 hours ago.
We've received several calls from constituents who are concerned that their votes are being miscast.
According to Phillips, the voting machines are very much secure and go through multiple tests to make sure they are up to code.
Right. And so, but touchscreen voting is just, it's a nightmare. And I think, it's just, it's the people that are complaining there in Tennessee are Democrats. So because of that, it's probably more likely to be addressed. But, and, because Democrats are saying they're touching Kamala or whatever, and it's setting Trump. And because they have TDS, anytime they see Trump's name, they have a conniption fit and they almost poop their pants. So, you can just imagine what kind of a panic that would be presenting to them. But, yeah, so it does happen. And there is I think touchscreen voting is ridiculous and, it should not happen. And Trump has said, we need only paper ballots. And I agree with him on that. But we also have a system that every state, I think, needs to have the authority. The state legislature needs to have the authority to determine that. And that's where, we either believe that we're in a constitutional republic or we don't. We either, it's so funny that these people, I'm sure that this Kylie Kramer calls herself a constitutionalist, and yet she's calling for a completely unconstitutional solution to the problem. She's saying that voters need to declare a state of emergency to get rid of the machines. The only way for this to happen is through mob rule. It would be what she's calling for is a complete and total constitutional crisis. And this has been shared tons. Like, people are all into this. I don't know if they're just not reading it all the way through and they're not reading this. But this is the only way to accomplish this is through not just chaos, but violence. And this is wrong. This is absolutely unequivocally wrong. And if you look on X, it's everywhere. So let me find it here. Hang on just a second. Okay. So wrong one here. There we go. So this is just scrolling down. I just searched machine flipping and we've got post after post and it's all, there's Kylie's thing. And now they're saying in Texas is the latest state to report election fraud. It's not fraud. People have fat fingers or it could be a calibration error, but it's people that are, checking their vote, their printed out thing and seeing that there's an issue with it. This is not fraud, but they're doing everything they can to disenfranchise Republican voters, to make people panic and fearful and angry, to raise the temperature. That's what all of this is about. And it's not the issue that they're claiming that it is. Um, it says voter fraud being reported in 3 states. It's not even November yet. That's from Yoshi the Patriot. Um, Dominion flipping machines is at it again, says Real Robert. The forever Trumper says we need to stop the Dominion machines from flipping votes. Um, this one, Cambry, she's a big account within the Flynn orbit. I'm in a group text with my family. Voting machines are flipping from Trump to Kamala in Kaufman, Texas. So you can see there's just a lot of it. It's all incendiary. It's all just panic. It's all up in arms. It's all just talking about fraud. It's not fraud. It's it's errors. It's user error on the part of the voters. It could be user error on the part of the people that are working for the polls and they're not calibrating them correctly. It could be, is it that, some foreign actors hacking in or some Democrats are hacking in? I mean, there's both Democrats and Republicans complaining about this happening. The bottom line is check your ballot and chill the F out. This is not as big a problem as they're saying that it is. Adam says nobody cares about the Constitution when it's inconvenient for themselves. That's exactly. Oh, and it, there are exceptions to that, but I am a free speech absolutist, and what that means is that you've got to embrace other people's right to say things that hurt your feelings, and but we have been conditioned through, and this is just one more way that we're conditioned and emotionally manipulated to believe that anything that hurts our feelings is evil. And if it's evil, then there's no length that is not justified to go to in order to stop the evil. And it's a really bad place that we're at. I want to share this this is related. I was sent this just immediately before, and this is a 3-minute video of Kamala, and it very much relates to what I talked about yesterday. So, and Patrick Byrne. So here we go.
So yesterday we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired 4-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is.
Okay. So do I believe that Trump actually said that? So we have one account just all of a sudden 4 years later, as an October surprise, he waited until now to tell the public that he heard Trump say that he wanted generals just like Adolf Hitler had. I mean, come on, come on. Do you think that really happened? Would if he said that, why didn't he say that before the 2020 election? Oh,
Loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military that is loyal to him. He wants a military who will be loyal to him personally.
Okay, this is projection, obviously, but let's go.
One that will obey his orders even when he tells them to break the law or abandon their oath to the Constitution of the United States. In just the past week.
Okay, so has she followed her oath to the Constitution as the borders are by allowing 20 million illegal aliens to come across? I don't think so, but we'll continue.
Donald Trump has repeatedly called his fellow Americans the enemy from within, and even said that he would use the United States military to go after American citizens.
All right, the enemy from within. Let's just review that here.
And even said that he would use the United States military, the enemy from within. Has repeatedly called his fellow Americans the enemy from within, and even said that he would use the United States military to go after American citizens. And let's be clear about who he considers to be the enemy from within.
She's such an expert on Trump's inner thoughts. She always knows exactly what Trump thinks. She's always saying it. This is what Trump thinks. This is what he knows. This is what he wants. And it's just unbelievable that anybody, it's so hard to imagine that anybody would take her seriously, right? So Adam says, also, Donald Trump groped me 30 years ago. I was just suffering in silence until 12 days before the election. I'm so sorry that that happened to you, Adam. Oh, and Trump's third run for president. Yes, exactly. That so we're waiting until this happened 30 years ago, but I wait till for his third run for president, 12 days just before the election to share it then. Farm Girl says this press conference was all coordinated with the big media articles that came out right after she did this. Of course, this is all very highly coordinated.
Anyone who refuses to bend a knee or dares to criticize him would qualify, in his mind, as the enemy within. Like
in his mind. So she knows exactly what is going on in his mind because you have to go based on what she says because there's no other way that you could prove that he actually believes that.
Judges, like journalists, like nonpartisan election officials. It is deeply troubling and incredibly dangerous that Donald Trump would invoke Adolf Hitler, the man who is responsible for the deaths of 6 million Jews and hundreds of thousands of Americans. All of this is further evidence for the American people of who Donald Trump really is. This is a window into who Donald Trump really is.
Yep. And that is exactly right here, like Patrick Byrne. So the title of Byrne's movie that I talked about yesterday is The Enemy Within. And so she uses that twice here in her little speech, and it goes on, and it's all just ridiculous and fake. And of course, she doesn't take any questions afterwards. She just gets up and leaves. I'll just share that because not the way that she did this was.
The question in 13 days will be, what do the American people want? Thank you.
Yeah. That is pretty stunning. And I think that's also just confirmation that we're winning. if that's the best that they've got. Adam says it's another brilliant message from Kamala. He's really Hitler. Really, 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 he's Hitler. Exactly. Oh, that is the best that they've got. And it's really pathetic. The reality, of course, is that Trump's military was awful. The leadership of the military was awful. And, um, I haven't really studied Hitler's military leaders. I wouldn't be able to tell you the names of any of Hitler's military leaders. Rommel, I think I could tell you Rommel, just from high school history class. But I don't know whether or not there was any dissension among his ranks. I have no idea. But it is, I think, a lot of our hope that after that when Trump is elected, that he's going to have people who are loyal to him, who are not trying to undermine his presidency and try to undermine and destroy everything that he's doing, because we're electing him to do a job. And if they're doing that, they're undermining us. They're disregarding what the voters are electing Trump to do, which is to drain the swamp. Carolee says, we are so winning. No matter what November 6th presents, we will still win. And I agree with you on that very much, Carolee. We will win because we've got the people. And as long as we do not fall to their PSYOPs and engage in stupidity, and that's kind of the whole point. If the machines are rigged, there is no limit in which there is no evidence. I got in a debate. Emerald Robinson herself responded to one of my posts saying that, that I'm some bald guy that that was her attack on me. And I'm a liar that saying that there's no fraud. No, I'm not saying that there's no fraud. I never have said that. I'm not saying even in this podcast today, I'm not saying that there's no problem with the machines. There are problems with the machines. We need better security. Touchscreen machines are stupid. Touchscreen voting is stupid. It's just not a good. Yeah, there's no way to audit it. That's the problem. You need to have a way to audit it. And when you're trusting a QR code and a QR scanner, that's a difficult thing to audit. And so we need to be able to audit. The only way you can audit that is by hand counting every single ballot, but even the way that they're printed, it makes it difficult just to do it at a glance. So yeah, it's not a good system, but it's the system that we've got. And so we've got to win with that system. If we've got to win with the system that we've got. And that's the whole point. We've got what we got. And we can whine and complain like babies about it, or we can follow Trump's lead and we can be too big to rig. We can grab the bull by its horns and we can win. And that's what we've got to do is we've got to win. So let's win. Let's be too big to rig. Let's make sure that you vote early, get as many people as you can to vote early with you. And let's win before election day even happens. If we're winning with the early votes, it is game over. It is game over. There's nothing they can do. If we win with the election day vote or with the early votes and we win on election day, they can't steal it. They can try. And in some states, like in Arizona and Michigan, where they're saying it's going to take 10 days to count ballots, there's no good reason for that. We have tabulators for that purpose. There is no good reason at all for taking 10 days to count votes. There's only bad reasons. But we can cut their legs out from under them by coming out in big numbers, and let's do it. And even if they steal it, even if they succeed in stealing it, we can still win by being good. And we've got to be good. We've got to insist on being good. And that means no, saying that we're going to have a national, emergency. Going back to Kylie Kramer saying, where is it here? The only option at this point is to ensure voters in Georgia have a secure, free, and fair elections by declaring a state of emergency. So the people can't declare a state of emergency. The governor can declare a state of emergency in response to stupid crap that the people do. And so if people follow them in this, it would be truly evil. And I think that there's a greater chance for violence after the election if Trump wins than if Kamala wins. Because exactly what Kamala expressed at her rally when somebody said Jesus is Lord, and she said, "You're at the wrong rally." They don't have the Lord. They do not know what is good and what is evil. And so that's they're much more likely to descend into evil. But as long as we are good, we will win. And we need to have that eternal perspective that suffering can come upon us and that we can rejoice in those trials. James 1:2. We can rejoice in those trials. And we need to. That's because that's what God calls us to do. So we're going to win. I think, things are looking really good. It's so obvious that we're winning. You look at Kamala Harris and just what a crap show she is. And, and, she might be even worse than Biden already at this point. And, yeah, so we're winning and we're going to win. Let's be good. Let's avoid and shame and identify and the insiders, because that's what we've got to do. The insiders are evil. They're trying to get good people to do bad things. And that was an exact quote from Joe Altman, who said, "The time is coming for good people to do bad things to bad people." And that's exactly what I've shown repeatedly that Mike Flynn has been working towards, that the entire Flynn network has been working towards, trying to get good people to do bad things to bad people. And we cannot do that. We need to be good. So let's be good. We can win. And in the long run, we take the long road. We look at this from an eternal perspective. This is just an election. It's an important election, and let's grab the bull by the horns. Let's get out there. Let's win. And we can be good by just knowing this is just an election, and God's got this, whatever it is. God is sovereign. So thank you. I'm so grateful for all of your attention and your support. Best way to support me is on my Substack, which is biggertruthmedia.com. That is biggertruthmedia.com. You can subscribe for $5 a month. You can read the story that I was referencing at the beginning, and all of my archives. I've got well over 100 articles in the archives right now that you would have access to. And I also prioritize communication with my paid subscribers. So if you have any questions, I'm always happy to answer them on X or anywhere else. And I do prioritize my time with my paid subscribers. So please do subscribe. That does support me. It is very, this is not an easy way to support one's family. So, and especially starting from nothing, I'm just trying to get better and better at what I do so that more people want to share it. So, and that's another thing you could do is just to share this podcast, share, any of my work that speaks to you. It will probably speak to others too. So thank you very much. And until Monday, have a great weekend.